So hello everybody, thanks for joining us today. We will have a talk about marketplaces and how Sylius slots in. So it's rather a biz talk, but some of you are developers, so most of you are developers, so it will be also a bit technical. So just quick introduction. We are here on behalf of two companies, 3BRS from Prague. We are one of the very first partner outside Poland. So we know Sylius inside out for 7 years already, I think. And the other company is Listabl, and how this connection was made that 3BRS started to do business in the UK, and marketplaces are quite spread in that market. So we were like, hey, we should maybe focus on marketplaces. So we founded another company in the UK and started to be present on the market there. And at the moment, we are joining forces in terms of HR. So we've got a development team in Egypt, in Cairo. So we are spread across 3 countries, more marketplaces in London, more Sylius development in Prague. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, so my name's Dan. Hi. I think I may be the only English person here. I'm not sure. Some nods. So my background is marketplaces. Is not really Sylius, but I partner with Johan, who obviously does know Sylius backwards. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, the kind of ecosystem that we're working in. When we're talking about marketplaces, we're talking about third-party channels. So I'm actually here to tell you that that websites are now redundant. No? Okay, I appreciate the audience that I'm talking to. But essentially, when we're talking about marketplaces, we're talking about transactions that happen outside of your website. And when you're talking about a kind of a retail ecosystem, we think of it in these terms. So, global, EU, and UK. And essentially, the Listabl platform is designed for a global market, but we are focused primarily in the UK at the moment. So marketplaces appeal to pretty much any seller. There are different types, different flavors of marketplaces, but anybody who has physical products or even non-physical products might be interested in particular marketplaces. And generally speaking, if you're talking about sort of the e-commerce ecosystem, every one of these sellers might be a seller on a marketplace. And so this is the kind of the world that we're operating in. So the question about why you might want to sell on a marketplace, I would argue that, and I've seen stats that suggest that 60% of all e-commerce transactions happen on a marketplace. So that's more than half, obviously. And whenever I see stats like this, I kind of I kind of do a sense check. Do I believe that number? And if you think about the number of transactions and the types of platforms that have marketplaces, Amazon, eBay, they tend to be the bigger platforms. And so I actually believe that this transaction, this came from another listing platform who'd done some research into the system. So I actually believe that 60% number. I also found another stat that suggests that merchants who are selling on 3 or more channels, 3 or more marketplaces, sell more than 3 times as many as those who don't. So about 324%. Again, when you sense check that number, I can believe that number because the bigger marketplaces tend to sell quite a lot of volume. So really the world that we're operating in, if you take marketplaces, we're operating in the world of structured product data. So all of these channels, from marketplaces, comparison shopping engines, require structured data in a fairly rigid format. So if you sell something on Amazon, they say, these are our browse nodes, these are the categories you can list in, these are the product types you're allowed to use, these are the color values you're allowed to use. And so all of these channels, when you're dealing in e-commerce, require some form of structured data, but pretty much all of them require a different form of structured data. And that is the problem that we're trying to solve. The new channel on the block, obviously, is AI shopping. ChatGPT, Perplexity have both introduced checkouts on their sites. So we're now obviously sort of operating in a world which is going to be increasingly impacted by AI. But mostly what we're going to be talking about is structured data. So what is a marketplace? This is a quote from Forbes that suggests that effectively a marketplace is somewhere where the transaction takes place outside of your website. Other channels like shopping engines and affiliate networks are driving traffic back to the website. So this adds complexity, and Johan is probably better suited to talk about complexity.
Right. In the very morning, we saw that Sylius is a bit involved in this, but marketplace, we are usually here talking about the traditional marketplaces. That means Amazon, eBay, you know all them. But there is an increasingly higher and higher number of specialized marketplaces, such as those four. Some of them are specialized in fashion, such as Zalando. Some of them were a seller, as Decathlon, French one, now a marketplace. Or Dan Burnham's, for example, was a retailer with department stores. Now it's an online seller and became a marketplace. So, as well focused on fashion. So those are the specialized marketplaces. But today you can build your own marketplace with Sylius. So, well, everyone could have his own marketplace. But the most important is that the focus is to sell more on more channels and faster. This is the most important quote. It isn't optional, it's expected. Because, and I will be talking about this in a few minutes, that at least in the UK, most of the sales are done on the marketplace, and some of the sellers don't even have their own store. However, there are a couple of challenges for the sellers, and there are a couple of expectations from customers, because with the large boys in the game, such as, I keep repeating it, Amazon, eBay and stuff, they provide usually quite well done localized logistics, because you expect the package next day near where you live. You expect well done VAT invoices. For example, Kaufland didn't do this quite well, but and of course the problem of Central Europe, the Czech Republic, Poland, Austria, native language, because you would be surprised, but quite a few people can do things in English and are afraid entering their cart when everything is in English. So localization is key. Most importantly, and that will be a couple of next slides, is the data quality, because you could say that tools like BaseLinker, they all do this. They take your data, they forward the data via APIs to 5, 10 marketplaces, you name it. But that's actually not enough, because usually you need different data for different marketplaces. Sometimes there is a title limit 80 characters, sometimes there's title limit 200 characters, banned keywords, different sizing systems, and all this. So unified content across all channels is not what you want. It works. You can list listing, you can get it online on marketplace, but the visibility is usually poor. So that's one of the biggest challenges, I think. And then another challenge, which is again increasingly important, who did at least one purchase on one of these marketplaces in last, let's say, few months? No? Yeah. Just say it out loud. You did. Those are, Chinese marketplaces. But the fact is that on Amazon, there is 60% Chinese marketplaces already. So China is already in all those big platforms, and now they have their own platforms, which is a big challenge for European sellers, of course, because we need to keep up. And we need to offer the same thing which they are offering. And how do you want to offer all of this and still be the cheapest one? They are very aggressive. I have just one story, because we became the integrator for Temu and Shein in the UK. So we had quite a lot of talks with them recently. When you submit a ticket on Amazon's or eBay developer portal, you get the response in one day. Thank you for your question, blah, blah, blah. When you submit a ticket via the developer portal on Temu, they will contact you in 10 minutes with like, okay, here is the Slack channel, here is my colleague, ask whatever you want. And if you don't respond, because, well, it's night and they've got day, in the morning you've got an email message, do you still need my assistance? So they are hyper aggressive, super fast, and it's really hard to compete with them. Okay, now the data part. I was talking about data quality. So how does it all work? You've got a few options how to integrate the data and send them on marketplaces. First, of course, flat files, CSVs, XMLs, JSONs, whatever your platform can export. You can integrate via the API, that means development, that means some costs. You can outsource development costs for integration platform as a service, or you can use the listing tool, which is usually software as a service or a service, a classic service. Data flow, the data flow goes like this. You sell something, you send the product data as they are onto the middleware. That could be that Baselink or Rhythm or Listabl. The middleware converts the data in the format of the marketplace through the API or whatever the marketplace supports. The purchase happens on the marketplace. The order data comes through to the middleware, which aggregates all the data from different marketplaces. That goes back to the seller. That means, again, Sylius, ERP, Business Central, whatever. You do the fulfillment here, and you send shipping updates via one unified API to the middleware, and the middleware connects to the other marketplaces. That's how it works. Over to Dan.
I think the bit that's missing from here is most middleware platforms that integrate with multiple marketplaces just integrate with the marketplace. They don't convert the data. They require the seller to convert the data. And this is the thing that becomes the big anchor.
Sorry to step in.
Yep.
I agree. There are some more workflows, for example, with returns. So there are, let's say, 3, 4 more workflows, but this is the main one. Data, orders, shipping updates.
But the point I was going to make is that about 60% of the work of managing marketplaces for a seller is on the product data. And that becomes an anchor on the business because there's, that 600 marketplaces, I think, is pretty underplaying the size of the marketplace. I think there's more than 1,000 now. I think Miracle, which is a French integration platform, has about 450 just by itself. They are the biggest player, but they have about 450. So the complexity for a seller is that you have to format the data, all of the data points for every marketplace separately. That onus becomes too big for most businesses, and so they rarely do more than 3 marketplaces. I used to manage campaigns for companies like Vodafone and Dell and businesses like that on marketplaces, and the most, even when we were managing it, the most we ever got one seller on was 20 marketplaces. And 8 of those were Amazon, 8 of those were eBay. It just is such a big anchor on the business that you kind of slow down and you just don't bother anymore. So let's use some examples from real product data. So I have a question for you. If you're listing clothing on Amazon, how many size attributes or size attribute options do you think you have in the Amazon spreadsheet? By a show of hands, let's just very quickly go through. Do you think it's less than 5? No, it's a bit of an obvious question, isn't it, really? 5 to 20, anybody? Any takers? Okay, we've got 3. 21 to 50. Okay, good show of hands. 51 to 100. And over 100. Okay, so the actual answer is 112. Now, obviously you're not going to use all of them, but that's the list. And that, as a seller, means that you have to learn which ones are relevant for your products. Each one of these has a separate set of attributes or values that you're allowed to use. And so the work is just phenomenal for sellers. So the way we think about product data, we kind of break them down into 3 tranches, if you like. Categories. Generally, if you think about marketplaces as product search engines, and you're competing with other sellers, so you want to make sure that your data is optimized so that you show up more often than your competitors. So categories are generally used as filters. on the site. So people may say, well, look, I'm looking for a sofa, and they'll filter by the furniture category down to sofas and see what's there. Other people, most people will enter a search query. About 80% of people enter a search query. So we'll come to titles in a second. Also, categories are used to determine which attributes are required. So obviously, if you're selling a bike, you're not going to be asked what the length of the sleeve is, because that's not relevant for a bike. So each product type has its own set of requirements. So text fields, the way we think about these is these are free text fields, text strings, if you like. Examples will include titles. Titles are really important on most channels because you need to optimize those for keywords, right? So eBay is a great example. If you enter a search on eBay, eBay will match your keywords to the titles almost exclusively. Not absolutely exclusively, but mostly. So if you don't have a keyword in your title, the chances are your product won't show. Descriptions are interesting because on some sites they're really important, but if you look at an Amazon page, the description is below the fold. So Amazon don't like them. They replace them with bullet points. They think that bullet points are a much better way to describe the product. But again, on Amazon they're searchable, on eBay they're not. And you kind of want to, so you have limited options in terms of HTML on Amazon, but on eBay you can brand it, you can pretty much make your description in any way that you want using whatever templates you want to use. And obviously that's important because eBay is not competing with you. eBay is just a marketplace for sellers. Amazon is potentially competing. They are potentially a competitor, and therefore they want to kind of restrict your ability to take their customer away. eBay's kind of the same. They want to keep you on the platform. The last group of attributes or group of fields, if you like, are attributes. And attributes usually are lists of values. So pick one of these colors, pick one of these sizes. And these are determined by the categories and can be mostly, they can be anything from the simplest sites will have like six maybe attributes. Others will have 20. Amazon is the most complex. They have ridiculous amounts of requirements. Make sense? So if we look at the way the Listabl platform, bit of selling here about the Listabl platform, what we do is we focus on that data. So if you tell us what the color is, you don't need to tell us separately for every channel that you want to sell on. It's the same color. We're going to pass that on to every channel. So you connect your data to our system. It runs through an import transform where you can configure the data to map to our taxonomy. And once you've matched to our taxonomy, we have pre-connected that taxonomy to each channel. So if you tell us what the category is, we can put it in the right category on eBay, Amazon, Zalando, wherever you want to sell it. So examples of this. So if you map something to our men's clothing category or clothing men's trousers, we can connect that to Amazon's browse node, which is 173.103.0031. I actually remembered that. I'm lying. And then Debenhams equivalent category would be men clothing, men's trousers, and then eBay's category is 57989. But more than that, we can extract, if you tell us that something is a pair of men's trousers, we know more about that product already. So we know that the department will be men, we know that the gender will be male, and we know that the age group is adult. Most platforms require you to send that separately. And most channels, most marketplaces will ask for this data. Amazon specifically will. So just to give you a real world example, this is from one of our customers. So they gave us 3 data points. Product type was pants, department was women's, size was 00. Right, so 00, what does that mean? We had to talk to them, and we built a conversion. It turns out that that is a UK size 6. So we converted that data to our values, which is, put it in the clothing women's trousers. The size is 6, and the size type is regular. We're assuming the size type here. We basically say, well, if you don't tell us differently, we assume that it's going to be a regular size that you're referring to. And we can then take those 3 data points and connect them to these channels. So instead of 18 separate mappings that you need to do, in our case, you just do 3. And that expands, right? So the more channels that you add, we are responsible for connecting you to those channels. And that's the task that is facing sellers who are listing on marketplaces. So the upside, the result of a platform like ours is that you can sell more. I mean, that's really the goal, right? Sellers just want to sell more. And so we can improve the listing quality because we can infer things from the data. If you're talking thousands of SKUs, you're not really going to be able to get a lot of this information for everything without hiring banks of people and having them sit in front of spreadsheets. You can list in a fraction of the time. So a lot of sellers will want to test new channels. And if it takes them 2 months to set up that trial, it's not really much of a test. You may as well just do it for real. And so a system like ours allows a seller to go, well, look, let's just switch on Mano Mano and see if that works. And then you can manage, obviously, a lot more channels, which means that you can reach more customers and therefore sell more.
Right, and now how Sylius slots in from our experience, because we are working with Sylius every day. There are basically two routes how to implement marketplaces. The first is that I've got Sylius, I've got Shopify, and I want to sell on marketplaces. That's the route. Tell me all the data, and I will push them to all the channels. But Sylius can be also a channel. When you've got some kind of PIM, if you don't, the Listabl can be used as a PIM, but the usual thing is that the seller already has something, a source of truth. Pushes the data as they are to Listabl, and they are then pushed to other channels. In the UK, it's still mainly Shopify. Most of the sellers have Shopify. We've got just a few Sylius stores which work like this, but that's another option. Of course, Sylius could be on both ends. Another installation of Sylius, why not? We are using API platform, of course, because that's what Sylius offers. For Shopify, it's usually their API. Sometimes it's flat files, and it could be whatever. But that's where Sylius is in this workflow. So if you already have Sylius and want to connect to marketplaces, this is the way to go. Most importantly, and that's the main message of the presentation, if you are only selling on one channel, you're playing defense because of the Chinese issue I was talking about, and simply the sellers in especially Western countries, mainly in the UK, when you want to buy something, you go on Amazon, and if it's not on Amazon, it doesn't exist. Similarly in France. So it's absolutely necessary to be on marketplace. There is one more risk. When you are not on a marketplace, you risk that someone else will start selling your products, which you don't want, obviously. So just for the brand awareness, you might want to be there. And same if you are selling only with Sylius. I answered this basically just a few sentences back. It's not enough because if you're not on marketplace, there's a great chance that some customers will never find your product. Again, last 15 minutes, we thought that there will be many questions to this. Can I just ask the first one? Probably your developers, or you're taking care of some customers or some sellers. Do you have some hands-on experience with marketplaces? Anyone? 2?
Not many.
3? 4 maybe. 3. Thank you. And do you plan to dive into these problematics, or is it something which is just out of your interest? Yes. So most of you are ready. Okay. So we can offer, of course, free consultations, free demos, or just ask us for whatever you want about marketplaces, because I think, especially Dan doing that last 20 years only, marketplaces is the biggest expert here. So while eating lunch, let's get a chance.
I had a question about the Sylius marketplace, which I realized was there only today. So it's not in the slides, but it occurs to me that if I'm a seller and I'm selling on marketplaces, I might want to add a website as a secondary thing. Very often, smaller sellers will start in their bedroom, listing on eBay, and then they'll expand to Amazon. But then eventually they'll want a website. So the challenge, I guess, is the structure of the data that sits in Sylius. When you're talking about a website, that tends to be fairly open-ended. Right? So you're always going to need a title, you're always going to need a price, but attributes of the products, is the thing that's open-ended, and that's, I guess, a question in my head about how I might, as a seller, structure my website around that data that I've already got structured in Listabl, because I'm already doing marketplaces. So how many of you are kind of interested or working on that marketplace piece?
You think so, I guess.
Yeah.
Nobody really had hands-on experience.
Is it something that you think your clients would be interested in? Because, I mean, effectively, they are the advantage of adding marketplace products to your site, if you are a site operator, is you're not buying the inventory. So you're not tying your cash up in buying stock, but you're still able to add stock to the website without the initial outlay. And then you're basically making a commission every time you sell something. So I'm just interested in, I was obviously, as a marketplace specialist, so I was very interested in that feature and wondered what the take was from the room. Yeah. Do you mind if I give you?
I have a question based on this. What is, because we have a solution of selling things that we'll present this afternoon called Atitgo with AI. And we have a lot of customers based on distribution that are interested in selling in marketplaces. But the main question was, as I understood that there is a translation table that you're doing at the beginning from their product, which is very specific. It's alcohol and food, to your system, then that you spread it to the marketplaces. What is the time? Is it an automatic setup, or do you need to do any, specific things to do this translation?
Okay. Shall I answer that? So yeah, we are folding in AI. Okay, so if you look at Miracle as a good example, they claim that they can create marketplace listings from AI. If you look at the results, they're not great. And essentially, what you need to end up with is structured data that meets the requirements of the marketplace, which Miracle can do with their own platforms, and they can do with Amazon, I believe, now. But the quality of that data is suspect, shall we say. So with our system, mostly it's an original mapping, but we do it with rules, right? So you say, you may kind of pivot all your colors and convert them. So colors tend to have two values, a text string. So if you say the color is mountain mist, it's like, what is that? Is that white? Is that gray? What is it? And when somebody's on a marketplace, they might filter by color and say, I'm looking for a red dress, a white dress. So you need to convert it to the primary value, red, white, whatever. And so you can build that in when you first bring that data into our system. So the next time we see that color, we can say, oh, we know what that conversion is. Similarly, though, with AI, if you have a T-shirt and the marketplace requires the sleeve length, which they often do, and you haven't told us what that is, we are looking at ways to read the picture to analyze whether it's long or short sleeved and that sort of thing. But we're doing it in quite a careful way, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? I mean, yeah.
Did you have a customer that is in the food industry?
Not yet. Not yet.
No.
Yeah, it's mostly fashion or automotive, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, food. I've been doing marketplaces 25 years. I've consulted to like Pepsi, but I've never actually managed the listings for any food company. It's a slightly different setup because there's a lot of kind of certification and things that go behind with food, that sit behind it to make sure that it's hygienically, you're allowed to sell it on a marketplace. And it's only recently that Amazon has introduced food and eBay has introduced food, so it's not really been in my wheelhouse. Any other questions?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
One of the questions that I have stems from past experience on a retailer that wanted to go and become a marketplace. And they started very blindly, like saying, from tomorrow we're going to be a marketplace, without having a solid understanding of the complexity behind it. And 3 years later, they almost went bankrupt because of this endeavor. How is Listabl able to help someone that owns a successful retail website where they own the stock and they have their own suppliers that supply their merchandise and they control 100% their logistics workflow? How is this tool helping them to become a marketplace?
I think in terms of functionality, that's not really what we do.
That's
we
the business case, actually.
Yeah, we push data to existing marketplaces. Certainly, I know a lot about marketplaces, and I work with our sellers to say, well, look, this is what you need to think about. I think if someone's going into marketplaces for the first time and they want to add that to their store, which is why I was interested in the Sylius functionality, it's a lot more complex than you might originally think, and you need someone who is familiar with the marketplace well. Because the data is the product data is one thing, but then pulling back the orders and surfacing them and making sure that the customer doesn't ruin your reputation, right? So if you invite someone to sell on your site and they don't deliver, and they're letting the customers down, that reflects on you, right? And so you have to have very strict rules around what a customer or what a seller is allowed to do, and if they fail to meet those metrics, I mean, Amazon's very draconian; they'll kick you off straight away.
You can ruin your business before Christmas. When you fail to deliver orders, they'll just kick you out of the marketplace just before Christmas in Q4, and that can kill your business.
Yeah, eBay have a similar thing where if you fall below standard, you may be below standard for a year before they'll sort of release you. Does that make sense? It's very draconian. So yeah, there's a lot you need to think about.
Hi, thanks for a nice presentation. My question is, how do you compare Listabl to Channable and other product fits? Do they only fit, but they don't convert? Is this your USP that you convert?
Excellent question.
I actually really like Channable.
Yeah.
So Channable basically is going back to one of those diagrams, it's an integrator, right? So you can send a feed into Channable or an API into Channable. They will list it into the channels. They're playing around with APIs, with AI now. It's a nice platform. They're more focused again on the syndication. So in Channable, I haven't seen it since they've introduced their AI, but before that, they're still requiring you to provide them with the structured data. So if you want to list on eBay or you want to list on Amazon, you have to provide them with the data in the right format. There's a little bit of mapping. They've got a rules engine built into their system. It's nothing like as complex as ours, but it's a nice system. But we are creating products, so we're more of a PIM. You can create, edit, manipulate products within the system. Channable basically doesn't do that. I mean, you can merge feeds in a kind of complex way, but essentially they're not creating products, they're just sort of temporarily storing what's come in the feed and then pushing it out. Does that make sense?
We also integrate with Channable, so we had a customer who uses both products along for different purpose.
Yeah, I mean, are you familiar with Channable? Have you worked with them?
I never used it, but I know it is.
It's a good platform.
By the way, do you have any live example of Sylius for integration with Listabl?
Well, nothing I think I can show just right now. There are a few ongoing projects, and of course in the UK there's one company who is choosing between Base and us at the moment.
Yeah, Base is doing quite well. I mean, obviously Polish platform.
Yeah, Polish platform. It looks cheap, but when you discover all the integrations you need and all the extras you need, it's quite expensive.
Extremely price.
Yeah. The base price is low just to attract you, and then it goes up and up.
But you would put your product next to Channable and Base as the competitors, but you are more of a team.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So basically, Base is good on the back end, order management, stock control,
Warehousing.
that kind of thing. Them and Linworks really are the big two in that area in the UK. Channable is more about the distribution, which is more what we're about, the product information distribution.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're between you and lunch.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, we're a little bit early.
Thank you. Bon appetit.